Hi. Later in the day from my video before, I am off to the optometrist to check my eye because, well, about a week and a half ago, I got this big spot in front of my eye, which at first I thought maybe I'd looked at the sun, but then it didn't go away, and then my vision was cloudy in my left eye, blah, blah, blah. Old man complaints, and at first I thought, oh, I must have a detached retina, but after doing some research, I realized that a detached retina is quite serious, that more than likely what I have is what's called a vitreous, I believe this is what's called a vitreous separation, which is some of that fluid that is between the inside of your eye and the outside of your eye had torn, part of that had torn loose, and so then so that's what's caused the hazy vision, and then the other part was that then I had this floater thing in front of my eye, which is quite annoying. But anyway, so like I said, it's been about 10 days since this happened, and it's actually much better, but I'm still going to go to the doctor just to make sure. Okay, that's not what this video is about. I was going to continue with my theme of picking rocks, and again, I apologize if I've told this story before, but when we lived in Minnesota, the summer after my senior year in high school, I worked for this farmer. His name was Jim Nelson, and he was a young man. I'm sure he wasn't 30. If he was in his early 30s. But of course, he seemed old to me. You know, he and his wife, they had a baby or two. Anyway, so he moved up from the Twin Cities. They had bought a farm a few miles a few miles west of us. I can't even think now. A few miles east of us, and this farm, which had been worked, I think, since the late 1890s, early 1900s, every year would produce a crop of rocks that was so thick that you probably could walk corner to corner across a field and never touch dirt. And so, of course, what would happen is these rocks were left there again, had been there for millennia, but in the winter, because it would freeze, then it would thaw, the frost heaves would push these rocks that had been not there the year before, would push them up on top of the ground. I don't know how that works, and I'm not a geologist. I think, is that the right person who does that? But anyway, it's raining, if you're wondering what that noise is, and that's why I have my raincoat on too. But anyway, there were so many rocks in this guy's field. He had equipment, farm equipment, to move the rocks. So the first thing that you had to do was, there was this thing that you would drive along the rocks, and it was like a kind of like a drill bit, but basically what it would do is it would pile the rocks into a windrow. So you would go along, and this thing, you would pull it behind the tractor, and this thing would turn, and then it would move the rocks over into a windrow, just like if you were like what you would do before you baled hay, for goodness sakes, or if you would, I mean, it was just crazy. Then he had another machine that you would drive along, and it was sort of, you could pull behind the tractor, but on the on the outside, it had these two big arms that swung around. And by big, I mean that from end to end, it was probably 8 or 10 feet. But anyway, this thing would spin around, and then it had these fork things that sort of, the idea was that you would drive along the windrow, and then these fork things would go underneath the rocks, and then this big turning thing would then spin around, and the rocks that had been scooped or had been raked up, this thing would then throw those rocks into this big hopper in the back. And then you'd fill that up, and then you drive it over to the edge of the field, dump the rocks, and go back and get another one. I mean, and I don't know that I'm doing a good job of explaining just how ridiculous this was. That this had to be done. It was just insane, and it was loud, and it was just stuff would break. These rocks again. These were heavy. Oh, there's an accident over there. These are big, heavy rocks that I don't know. It's just, and now it just occurred to me too that we didn't wear any hearing protection or anything like that. It's just, I don't know. But again, I don't think I've done a good job of explaining how this whole thing worked. But it was, and then of course you would have to go back and pick up rocks by hand, the ones that it missed. And but anyway, then the idea after that was then you could go out and you could disc or harrow the field, and then you could go and plant whatever you're going to plant. And I will tell you, speaking of that, about those rocks breaking things. So one night he had me out, and it was late. I mean, it was 10, 11 o'clock, and I was driving the tractor and pulling behind me what's called a bush hog, which is a big disc that's meant to break up difficult soil, sod, that kind of stuff like that. It has big discs on it about this big, and those discs have teeth on them that are about that tall and about that wide, going all the way around. And it's for some serious breaking up of ground. And there were 2 rows of these that you pull behind the tractor, and each one had 8 discs that were formed in a V shape, like this. So just to tell you about the rocks, and this was a field, by the way, the rocks had been picked up in. So I'm driving this thing, and every now and then, bang, you hit a rock, bang, you hit a rock. And after a while, and what you could do is it had hydraulics, so you could lift it up, turn around, that sort of stuff like that. And so I noticed that the hydraulics weren't working. At least I thought the hydraulics weren't working, because this big disc wouldn't lift up. So I got off the tractor and I, did what I needed to do, which was to unhook the lines, make sure they weren't plugged, and that sort of stuff. And then come to realize that it wasn't happening. So I unhooked this big disc and left it out in the field, drove the tractor back up to the house and told them what had happened. And what you gonna do? And what it was is this disc was held together by these 4x4 steel beams that everything was welded to, and those rocks, it just basically broke it in half. It's just an incredible amount of force over time doing this over and over again, and it broke it in half. So, but anyway, okay, there's my second rock picking story. I don't think I have any more, but I'll let you know if I do. Oh, I do have one, actually, but I'll tell that next time. Okay, thanks for watching. Love you.